Welcome to this episode of A Facilitator's Journey. Today's a solo episode, so let me introduce myself. Kirsty, founder of School of Facilitation. So I'm going to talk today about my summer in 2026, so June, July and August. I'm going to share with you what I've done, what we have done at SoFest, the travel I've done, but also some of the lessons I've had along the way. So this is your invitation to go get a cuppa and pull up a chair and come sit beside me on my pink chair, which, by the way, I'm making a pink chair. That's to come. Anyway, I don't think there's going to be a break now because, we just roll straight in. So right now it is the end of August 2026. And for the last 3 months, I've basically been either full on in delivery or full on in travel mode. So if you don't follow me on social media, let's just wind back and I'll give you a quick chronological skip through the last 3 months and what it's meant for me in the business, because I think this is the important thing. Some learnings, team, that I can share with you of how maybe not to do something. So in June, it was all out either in delivery mode. So I did a bit of associate work. So I had a big summit to facilitate. And then we had SoFest. After SoFest, I took a week off to decompress because it had been full on. And then I had a couple of weeks before I flew out to Manila in early July. And then I did the summit again for this client that I was doing some associate work for. And then, because I was in Manila, I decided I would go down to Australia and New Zealand. So I was down in Australia and New Zealand for 5 weeks. Now, that brings us all together into the end of August. And that all sounds a lot of fun. And it was bloody incredible. So I'm just going to give you I want to share with you what happened at SoFest. I want to share with you some of the highlights of my travel and what I was doing, but also some of my learnings. So let's go back to SoFest. So many of you know about SoFest. So it happened. It was incredible. There were 80 of us in the field together in Essex. We started with a big opening circle, as all good facilitators do. And you won't believe it rained. Literally, the heavens opened and everybody just had, in very true British style, we had umbrellas up, we had ponchos on, we had hats, we had Wellingtons. What none of us then expected was by the end of that day, because the opening circle was around 11 a.m., by the end of that day, it was blazing sunshine. And we literally had sunshine for the rest of the festival. And it was so hot, which meant everybody's moods were lifted and everybody was in a very celebratory frame of mind. I can't tell you how beautiful it was to see what I had been creating in my mind come to life. And it was everything and more. We had 9 amazing speakers. So people were speaking on how to connect with Generation Z, how to be a brilliant associate. Or we also had a great speaker talking about what are the different systems that you can set up in your business to make it operate and run smoothly. So that all came to be. The workshops were amazing. We did get a lot of feedback that people were getting FOMO on particular workshops because they were unable to attend all of them. That was quite designed intentionally, and it's going to happen again in 2026. We asked people for their feedback, and we said one of the questions was like, why did you choose to come? And the key 2 reasons were connect with others and invest in myself. And I think that's really important that we do that as facilitators, trainers and coaches. You know that I bang on about it all the time, but that is what happened. Other things that then occurred at SoFest, we had a big campfire. We had the amazing Tabitha and Craig Dutton who got out their ukuleles and their guitars, and there was singing around the campfire. There was magical moments as well, where there was meditation, there was yoga, there was a sound bath, there was a full moon ceremony, which was just amazing. We sat under the full moon at one point, everyone sipping bubbles or drinking a beer and just chatting. And it was truly magical. So we are going to do it again in 2026. And at this point of recording, we have already sold 31 tickets, which I am just delighted by. And the early bird tickets go on sale in September. So fingers crossed, it's going to be bigger and better than year one. I said I'd always be really transparent about the finances. So I've got some numbers for you. The cost to run the whole event. So this is everything from having a project manager work on the project, social media costs, my team costs, Stripe costs, and then hiring the whole site, food, little things like volunteer T-shirts, the headphones for the silent disco. So that all came to £91,600. And this year we sold, the income, including sponsorship, came to £79,300. So yes, if you can do your maths, I School of Facilitation, made up the shortfall of £12,600. And I didn't pay myself. So this cannot happen again, ever. So things that I have done so the actions I've taken, I should say, to hopefully mitigate this in 2026, the ticket prices have gone up straight away. So many people have said to me they were too cheap last year for what people got. So over and above like the physical features of 2 nights camping, all your meals, it was the benefits people were saying that they got by being there. So, by listening to these speakers, they got lots of ideas that they could go and implement into their business around finances, around themselves, around resilience. The participation in long form workshops meant even more ideas were given that people could then go off and implement. But the biggest one was that overall sense of community and sort of realizing that we are not alone in this world. We are not, we don't need to be professionally lonely is the big thing. People took away, I think, for sure. So they've got their new tribe. They've got people they can connect to and talk with. So yeah, it was a pretty surreal experience. I asked some people like some feedback around, what would you say to those who are thinking of coming to SoFest next year? I'm just going to read some of them to you. And it says, some people said, SoFest shares the best of humanity. There was almost a giddiness by day 3 of people coming back to themselves, having spent time in nature and with open-hearted humans with the intention to connect, learn and share. Another quote. If you want to feel part of something bigger, go. If you want to learn and grow, go. If you want to expand your network with amazing humans, go. And then another one that just absolutely makes me smile is 2.5 days of investment in your business and you as the primary asset. Spacious, stimulating, and heart-centered. So if you're listening to this and you've been thinking about coming or going in 2026, yeah, this is your invitation. And if you're listening to this in September, the early bird tickets are available. So that was June, basically. Bloody bonkers. And I was knackered afterwards. One of the things my former self had kindly done was booked time away, and I went to Cornwall. And that, if you're in the UK, it was the first heat wave we had as well. So absolutely brilliant. Then I came back in July, and mid-July, I flew to Manila for a week's worth of work. And then I planned and decided I was going to go and do 42 days of traveling around Australia and New Zealand. And in those 42 days, I was seeing a lot of family and friends, but I was also meeting a lot of you. And I, in the end, had over 22 coffees, brunches, lunches, breakfasts, gallery visits, museum tours, and a hike. And I intentionally made it that I would meet people, other facilitators and trainers, as I traveled around Australia and New Zealand, because I wanted to understand what is going on that side of the world in our industry. And the things that I discovered were it's pretty similar to over here in the West. When you think, oh, I'm going to find some sort of nugget and I'm going to make this revelation and I'm going to be able to tell people, oh, they do this, this, and this in Australia and New Zealand that is different to our way of facilitating. I think besides how workshops are opened, and I'll talk to that in a minute, in both Australia and New Zealand, it's pretty similar. People talked when they shared with me what they do in terms of their work. It is the same. People are either doing strategic facilitation, ideation, training, leadership, sales, marketing. It's all the same. The challenges that people are facing in terms of maybe a slower uptake in the work, companies being a little more cautious than they have been in the past. I think one person, Steph Clark, said the time now reminded her of like 2008 and also going into the pandemic. There is an air of caution with businesses. One thing that really struck me, though, in both Australia and New Zealand is, again, it's just my felt sense rather than maybe reality, but the government and public sector felt larger than the work that we do necessarily here in the UK. But I could be wrong because I don't do public sector work in the UK, so it could be similar. The other thing as well, pricing, I got a sense as well, the price of work in Australia and New Zealand has a lower, how to say without sounding awful, I think it's down to economics. Like what we would charge here in the West for a project, you would charge lower by comparison in Australia and New Zealand. One thing that both Australia and New Zealand do at the beginning of a workshop is a particular welcome and an acknowledgement. So, and I might get the language wrong, so I do apologise if you're listening and you're Australia and New Zealand. So in Australia, there's an acknowledgement to the land with the Aboriginal people and the First Nation and who came first, which feels very right. And there's a certain way of saying it. And the same in New Zealand, except in New Zealand, the Maori welcome it's really feels very natural. Whereas in Australia, I was hearing people like getting quite resistant, not always wanting to. This is in the corporate setting, so this wasn't facilitators, but like sort of a voice of why do we have to do this? And I just sort of sat and listened because I was quite clear we should do it because, I Jacinta Cubis took me to an art gallery in a museum at the University of Melbourne, and it was all about basically it was Aboriginal art, but a lot of the focal point of it was around how the white man, the British, if I'm really honest, had gone in and colonized Australia and the damage, the death, that just all the horrible things that go along with colonization, and that was quite uncomfortable to look at and to read about and to hear because there was certain audio parts to this. But now Australia is like going, right, okay, we need to acknowledge the people who came first, and part of that is when we open meetings and when we open workshops is an acknowledgement to the land, like whose land are we on? Because there are there are at least, I think, 50 different Aboriginal tribes that sort of inhabit all around Australia. Whereas the Maori welcome felt very natural. That seemed to be something everybody did and just knew. And when I was at Kerry Price's conference, so Kerry Price, amazing facilitator. If you do not follow her, go find her, Kerry with an I. She has a brilliant network called the Facilitators Network. And so I went to her conference and I presented. Well, I didn't present. I ran a workshop on pricing, which was just brilliant to open up that conversation down there. Yeah, and we had a Maori welcome, and that was incredible and quite moving. We just don't do anything like that in the UK. But I guess we don't have that kind of background. Anyway, that was the one difference, team. I'm now wittering on. Now, other things that I have learnt by going away for 42 days, I didn't stay in the same place for more than 4 days. And I then worked out that was pretty exhausting. And if I was to do that trip again, I would stay like in one. So yes, I stayed in Adelaide, for example, for a week, but I stayed in 2 different places. Yes, I stayed in Brisbane for 1 week. I stayed in 2 different places. So if I do it again, I'm just going to stay in one place so I can unpack. So I didn't unpack my bag for sort of a good 30 days of those 42. So that's one learning. Another learning, I've got amazing friends. So I was able to stay with family and friends for the majority of the trip, except when I was in Brisbane. Other learnings. I thought I was going to be able to get some work done whilst I was away. And the way I'd set it up, other than having meetings and great conversations, I didn't do any work. Now, that has its benefits and it also has its downsides. So the benefits were I had a lot of time to do some thinking and reflecting on what's going to happen with School of Facilitation, where I want to go, what I want to do next. The downside was there was no connection with the corporate clients. There was no connections happening with potential revenue streams. And that feels slightly scary. I'm going to be really honest. So I've come back to a very empty diary because for 3 months of the summer, I have been very much focused on SoFest and then travel. And I think that is one big error. So what can I do differently? And this is the question I'm asking myself because you know, and I know the summer is notoriously quiet in our industry, but normally there's something in the diary for September, but I haven't even got that this year. And that just feels super, super weird. So that is my downfall, team, not having any work in the diary for September or October. And I feel like that is something that has to change if I was to ever go traveling again. Do I feel worried? A little bit, if I'm really honest. But I've got ideas. So there's a real big pull to go all in on the community side of the business. And what I mean by that is we have the Flourishing Facilitator, which is a 4-month dive into how we design and deliver as facilitators. But I've been playing with this model called Club, CLUB, so the client, the learner, you, and business. And I've used that as a framework of what we can be doing to structure our businesses, like things we need to think about as facilitators, as we're maybe designing our business, or even as we're going through and we've been in business or doing our freelance gig for the last 5-6 years. Those are the 4 pillars that we need to think about. And I've been thinking, how can I bring that to life to support you in your business and your thinking? So is it a mastermind? Is it a boot camp? I don't know if we need another membership in this world, but it's creating some spaces where you can come and do some more of your own learning, but also get hold of all the resources that I have. So I'm saying that all out loud for the first time because there are 2 reasons that I want to do this, because I think there's 2 problems to be solved. One, people have already told us that they're professionally lonely. And this would be a way of creating immediate connections and meeting like-minded souls. And when you are setting up your own business, like, you don't always know what is it you need to do. What are the things you need to consider? So yeah, the club covers all of that, really. So that's what I'm thinking. I'd be really interested if that resonates with you. Can someone drop me a message? Just drop into my DMs, whether that's Instagram or you've got your telephone number. Drop me a WhatsApp or drop me a message on LinkedIn, because often I put these ideas out into the ether and you just never know if anyone's going to hear them. So it'd be really cool if you could let me know. Other than that, it has been a pretty good summer. I don't have a suntan because Australia and New Zealand was so wet and so cold. I lived in my puffer jacket and my beanie for the majority of the time. So I'm very happy to be back in the UK. However, everyone's told me how hot it's been, and now it's starting to rain. Everyone's delighted. I'm like, I don't want to see more rain. But anyway, that's been my summer. SoFest and travel. And it has been brilliant and it has been exciting. And now we are back, and let's see what autumn brings and for 2025 as we roll into the winter of 2026. So team, thank you for joining me. I really appreciate you listening. If you've got any thoughts, any ideas, any questions, you know where I am. And if you are listening to this in September, feel free, please go check out the SoFest website and grab yourself an early bird ticket. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you in the future. And if you like this episode, give it a star, give it a like, and feel free to share it with your friends. Until next time, take care. Bye.